Good morning, students. Today we'll discuss a new chapter, that is your typical configuration of computer. This chapter carries 4 marks, that is 1 mark, 1 question, and 3 marks, 1 question. So this one is important for 3 marks. In the last chapter, that is your Boolean algebra and logic gates, we have studied one question from the 3 marks, and this is one of the 3 marks question, important one. And one 1 mark question will carry here. So while copying the notes, leave 1 or 2 pages after your Boolean algebra, then start from your right hand side page. Okay, students, we'll continue. So here in this chapter, we are going to discuss the motherboard structure. That means it is a board present inside the CPU. It contains all the components and ports and slots and power supply connectors will be present in your motherboard. This contains many integrated circuits and your slots and all divided into two parts, that is your north bridge and south bridge. So here how it is going to be functional, where it is being located, and why we need to study this one will be discussed in first motherboard. Motherboard, it is a main circuit board inside a computer. It provides a platform for all components and peripherals to communicate with each other. That means your components will be communicated in a one plain circuit board, that is your motherboard. Motherboard only will provide the communication between all the components. Your processing job will be done inside the computer, that is your CPU, with the help of your motherboard. Motherboard has 3 characteristics. This is important for 3 marks question, and motherboard is 1 mark question. One of the year it was asked what is motherboard, and characteristics, it is a repeated question. So please remember 3 points, 3 marks. Characteristics, form factor, chipset, processor, socket. Form factor means how motherboard was located and how geometrically it is being arranged in the CPU, and what are the electrical requirement will be supply for each component present in the motherboard is decided by your form factor. Every component will not take the same amount of the electricity. It takes a less amount. Few will take more amount. Few it needs converted electricity. So that will be decided by your form factor. Chipset, it incorporates. That means it coordinates between various components to transfer the data between one component to another component. That is your coordination data transfer between various components of the computer will be decided by your chipset. Processor socket, processor means your microprocessor. Microprocessor is vertically mounted in your computer. So it is directly inserted into your system, that is your processor. These are the different kinds of motherboard. So you can observe here it is having a different dimensions. Few has less ports, few has more ports. So that we'll discuss in the motherboard. So types of motherboard. First one is XT, that is extended technology motherboard. This is our oldest motherboard. It doesn't have any ports. Like whatever you are using now, USB ports, VGA slots, AGP ports, your modem, everything will not be present in the XT motherboard. It has only socket with a low in force, that is LIF, low in force socket, and one RAM slot, that is your random access memory slot, and dual inline memory module. And slots contains your ISA architecture, that is your industry standard architecture slots will be contained, and it has only 12 pin power connectors. Then the next one is your advanced technology motherboard. In the advanced technology motherboard, it has been changed. Your low enforced technology, what it was used in the XT motherboard, was changed to pin grid array technology. Pin grid array technology. And it in the XT motherboard has only RAM slot. Here your static dynamic RAM slots was introduced, and same your ISA slots will be present in the AT also. Along with that, peripheral component interconnect slots was introduced to your AT motherboard, and your 12-pin power connectors was changed to 20-pin power connectors in the AT technology. That is, your AT technology was a little bit improved from your XT technology. Then the next one is your baby advanced technology motherboard. Here it is a combination of both XT and AT motherboard. These are having pin grid array processor socket along with SDRAM, that is your static dynamic RAM, and double data rate random access memory. See, this is your one mark question, 2019 annual paper. Expand DDR RAM, double data rate random access memory slot was introduced in the baby technology. Along with that, PCI slots, ISA slots. The first time your ports was introduced, your ports, USB ports, MIDI ports, AGP slots, and your musical instruments ports will be introduced in your baby advanced technology motherboard, and it contains both 12 pins and 20 pins power connector. Then the next one is advanced technology motherboard. In advanced technology motherboard, your pin grid array was improved to mega pin grid array processor, and your RAM will be contains your DDR RAM, PCI slot. Along with that, advanced graphics processing slots will be introduced. This is your graphical ports was introduced in this technology. Along with your primary and secondary memory was introduced, along with your SATA, that is your serial advanced technology attachment connectors ports was introduced, that is your VGP slots. New technology like your all your input devices comes to your USB ports, like your keyboard, mouse, printer, and your trackball, scanner, everything will comes in the advanced technology ports, that is your SATA ports, that is your 20 pin to 24 pins of power connector used in the advanced technology extended technology extended motherboard. This is about your motherboard. Here motherboard, explain any three types of motherboard is one of the question. It's possible. Okay. Then your components of motherboard. Components of motherboard, see here, we are going to discuss these particular components. This is also one of the important question. Explain any three components of motherboard. General question. That time you can choose any of the component. Otherwise, if they have mentioned what is explain the components of motherboard, BIOS, CMOS, and any controller or processor, any of this point is possible. Processor, this we have discussed in the last year, that is your CPU. BIOS, basic input output system. CMOS, that is your complementary metal oxide semiconductor. Slots, disk controller, that is your secondary memory controllers like your hard disk and floppy disk controllers. Input output ports and any other interfaces. And bus. Bus means it transfers the signals between one component to another component in the motherboard carried through the bus. Okay, this is your components of motherboard. Each one will discuss. Each one is important for 1 mark, as well as any 3 points are specified point is important for 3 marks. Then processor. Do you remember in the last year we have discussed this diagram? Yes, this is your block diagram of your computer. A block diagram contains, and the memory was not there here. So input unit, output unit, output unit and CPU. A CPU contains three components, that is your control unit, arithmetic logic unit and registers. Input unit will accept the data from the input device and it converts that the input from human readable format into the machine readable format. That data will be enters into the processor to process the data. That processing will be controlled by your control unit. All arithmetic logic operations will be performed. Main actual operation will be performed in arithmetic logic unit. During execution, if any memory is required, that memory will be provided by your registers. That register is also one of the 1 mark question. And output device is used to display the output. Before outputting, it converts machine readable format into human readable format. The same thing, it is a main component of the motherboard. It controls and coordinates and supervises the operations of the computer. It contains how many components? 3 components, that is your ALU, control unit and register. ALU performs your arithmetic logic operations on input data. Control unit, it controls the overall operations of different components of the motherboard during the processing. Your register is a high-speed memory and it is a temporary memory used to store intermediate results generated by your ALU during. This is about your processor. It may possible for 1 mark question. And this is an important question, 2017 1 mark question annual paper. What is microprocessor? Microprocessor is a integrated circuit. It is an integrated circuit. See here, it is an integrated circuit mounted inside the motherboard. It incorporates the functions of computer that is in the CPU. That is, microprocessor is a computer processor which incorporates the functions of a computer's central processing unit. It is a single integrated circuit. Your computer speed, how we can measure? We can measure with the help how many instructions it performs per minute or per second will be calculated by your speed of your computer. That speed is measured in terms of clock speed. That means it is a time taken by the CPU to execute the instruction. It is measured in terms of hertz. Hz means hertz. Okay. Then next one is BIOS. This is a very, very important one. That means basic input output system. Once you switch on the computer, the few signals you may notice that. So your mouse blinks one light and your keyboard blinks the lights and your processor starts to run and you may hear some sound. Did you notice that? All these because of your BIOS. BIOS means it is a small chip that contains bootable files to load the hardware device and software into memory. If you want to work with your computer, the components which is connected to your computer, hardware components as well as to work what the software is required, everything need to be ready to work. When you switch on the computer, your bootable files will send the signals to both your hardware and software to get activate. That is sent by your BIOS, that is basic input output system. Then your complementary metal oxide semiconductor. See, did you notice that even though your system is off, once you switch on the next day, the time and date will be get updated, right? That will be done by your CMOS. Even though the system is off, the battery, this battery will provide you for your computer to update the date and time. Date and time. Updation of the date and time is very important to keep active in your computers. That is your metal oxide semiconductor. It is a small lithium ion battery, contains a small virtual memory to update your system date and time even though your computer is off. Yes, students, we have completed today's discussion. Today we have discussed what is motherboard, characteristics of motherboard, types of motherboard, and microprocessor, clock speed, and components of motherboard. Now we are discussing in the doing in the components of motherboard. We have discussed now 3 points, that is processor, BIOS, and CMOS. The remaining parts will continue in the next class, students. Thank you.